but he said like just a few more minutes. It's a really nice talk. Thank you. Kristen.
Let's take a picture.
Remember the last time we used these mics?
Oh, right, for the podcast. Right. I can't. This phone is so big. I can't even.
It's like I'm in the dark and you're in the light.
Okay.
Do it like this? Like
Do-
portrait?
You try hold it from that side. Eh.
No, you're in the dark. I think we're just not. Do a video. I don't know how this works. Don't know how to.
Video is worse.
Yeah.
God.
Okay, just take
Just for record's
any
sake.
picture for documentation. For the archive.
Come closer. I keep on putting lip. Someone said I have a lip gloss addiction.
It's like
It's
it
just-
gets off so easy.
Okay. I think this is coming loose. Yeah.
Sitting in front of a position. Yeah. Sit comfortably.
Okay. So do we face each other or?
You can face the people. You can just talk to each other or talk to us actually.
How do we start?
We're live.
How you doing?
Okay.
Good morning.
I guess, yeah, good morning to everyone who's listening in. Thanks for finding the time to listen to the story of two girls who made it, are making it. Yeah, so I'm Nafe. I'm Ali Nafe Malonje, one of the founders of Wona Collective.
And I am Lerato. I am the other co-founder of Wona Collective. So Wona Collective has been running for close to over 5 years. And we are an arts collective, which basically spotlights the stories of women and marginalized groups. So we started off as an arts collective, and then I think in year 2, we pivoted, or we grew into a communications consultancy as well. So that's been our balance, and that's what's been funding our work, but also that's been our passion.
Yeah. So I guess it would help to give us some history of how we started or like background. So Lorata's a visual artist, and I'm a writer. And in 2019, Lorata had an exhibition where she was exhibiting a series of drawings of women doing their hair. And I went to the exhibition and I said, "Oh, I would love to write for this." And she said, "Oh, I've been looking for someone to write for this." And that was the first project we did together. It was called Seasons. And after doing that, we're like, this is cool. We can do more of this, just kind of creating. And then there was something we wanted to apply for, but it required us to be like some kind of a formal entity, an arts collective. So that's how we decided to just form Wona. And at the time, it was just the two of us. So Wona means to see in Chichewa.
It doesn't stand for
It
Women
doesn't stand
of
for
National
anything.
Arts or
Please
some
don't
random things we've heard.
capitalize our name. It's not capital WONA. People always think it is. It's just C. Yeah, because we're creating spaces to see
And be seen.
Yeah. So that's how Wona started, and at the time it was just us two creating things, and most of the things that we created kind of geared towards sharing the stories of women, and that wasn't even intentional. It's not like we were doing that on purpose because we thought it was popular or what people wanted to see. It's just what spoke to us. Yeah.
Yeah, and also just to mention that application that were working on, we saw it on the Friday and it was due on the Monday. So Wona Collective was formed over the weekend.
Yeah.
So I think just to say that like a lot of the work that we had started off doing was very sporadic, and I think that speaks to the way we formed the collective. Very sporadic. We see the need for stories to be told. So speaking about our podcast Letters, we felt that there weren't enough stories of women in the history of Malawi being told. So for example, you see the 200 kwacha note and you don't know that you don't know Rose Jambo's story. You just know that she was a woman and she was a freedom fighter. So I actually remember being part of the Malawi Society in uni, and I had this idea of having names of martyrs martyrs on the back of our t-shirts, the Malawi t-shirts. And then I remember coming home and asking my mom to give me a list of martyrs, and I was like, do we have any women? And she's like, Rose Jambo. So I was like, who's Rose Jambo? And that kind of inspired, I think for me on a personal level, that inspired that episode on Letters. So just as a background, Letters was, I think, one of our first projects, and we would have, it's basically a podcast where we would sit down with younger and older Malawian women, and basically just have conversations with them and get them to write a letter to a specific motif. So with Rose Jambo, of course, she passed away, so we got her niece and the author of her book, Timole Benka, to write letters to her. So yeah.
So I guess speaking to the theme of like this talk of what it means to position yourself in such a niche way, I think that wasn't something that we intentionally meant to do. And I think sometimes, like I think people always say in like economics or in like business classes that you should find a problem and figure out how to solve that problem, and that's your business. And I don't think that's necessarily how we did it. I don't think we looked for the problem first. We looked for our passions first. It was driven. It was not externally driven. It was internally driven. It was, okay, what do we like to do? We like to tell stories. What do we feel called to do? And that's telling the stories of Malawian women and providing platforms for Malawian women to tell those stories, which ended up being niche, but it wasn't. We started telling those stories. Like once we did the Letters podcast, a lot of people would come up to us now and be like, can you do something similar for us? And we attracted an audience or a clientele that is of like-minded people. So we started as an arts collective telling stories of Malawian women, but we ended up attracting a clientele of people who wanted comms for stories of Malawian women in health, women in the space of like GBV. How do you tell stories of survivors and victims? So different areas, but all relating to things that we are passionate about, and that's because we started doing something that we were passionate about.
Yeah, and just to add to that, so we started off as an arts collective, which meant that we were creating, like, for example, we had an EP that we worked with different artists, musicians, and produced an EP. We had the podcast, we had a poetry series, and as Nafi said, that it attracted organizations and individuals, mainly in the civil society NGO space, that were working on documenting similar stories. And then I think also on personal levels, we were also then transitioning more into that space. So, and I think our art, our work allowed us, it kind of spoke for itself. But I like to say that I'm an artist with a purpose greater than myself. That is literally, that's been my mantra. And I think that's been how we work at Wona, and that allows us to not lose our voice when we get into those spaces. Because what happens when you're in a civil society, in an NGO space, is that there are different stakeholders with different priorities. So you have a funder who their priority is to meet their program objectives. So usually the programs could last over a period of maybe a few months, maybe a few years. But as you've seen, you know, funding is not always guaranteed. Like, I think we're all in this wave now where, just to be explicit, USAID funding is being cut. So that's something that I think a lot of small businesses are directly or indirectly having to deal with. So so I think whilst you work with funders and whilst you work with people who are obviously interested in the stories and want to learn more about the stories, and who engage with the content, I think it's always important to center the beneficiary. And I think the beneficiary in this case is the women. For us, at least, it's the women whose stories are often overlooked, or it's when we partner with certain organizations, we try to identify who the beneficiary is. So sometimes it could be for example, we worked on a project in Dzaleka. So you have young girls in Dzaleka who just want to share their stories. So we have to center that. We have to prioritize them as the beneficiaries. So for me, as a personal lesson, I've just realized that when you're creating art that is purposeful, you need to make sure that you don't get lost in the idea of, okay, this is what's going to get pay, and this is what I want to do as a selfish artist. But you have to center the stories, and I think that allows it to carry more weight and to be timeless.
Mm-hmm. I think a challenge that we have probably had over the past few years was when we started in 2019, we were doing things just because we wanted to do them, and we would pay for things out of pocket. We didn't have any grants or any funders. And that gave us a lot of freedom and meant that we can literally do whatever we want. And I think that was some of our greatest work, because we didn't have limitations or expectations from outside actors. It was all what we wanted to do. But now, as we grew and we needed to be paid, we needed to have a salary, we started needing to do work that would pay us. And that's how the communications consultancy side of it came. Because that would fund us to do our own work. But now what we ended up finding was that we wouldn't have time to do our own work because we had all these clients. And yes, it was clients within our space, and it was things that we wanted to do, but it wasn't our own work. It was work that we believed in and work that we were happy to contribute to, but it wasn't something that we had started or pioneered on our own. And I think as an artist, for a while, when you do other people's work for a while, you start to feel fatigued and like you're losing sight of what you are meant to be doing. So I think that's a challenge that we've had to deal with. I feel like now, 5 years on, we're still dealing with that, but I feel like we're in a better place, and maybe it's because we have a team of people, and we have other people in the team that we can hold each other accountable as a team to say, okay, what are our goals? Who is Wona, and what does Wona want to do? outside of funders, outside of anyone else. If we had all the money in the world, what would we want to do? And we don't have all the money in the world, but we do have some money. Like, we have enough to be like, okay, let's do this small thing. Let's do this small event. Let's do something with partners. Let's collaborate. And I think those, like, trying to hold on to those moments and those opportunities of creating on your own keeps you going, because you get really burnt out when you're doing other people's work. It doesn't feel as satisfying.
Yeah, and I think in the process we've had, I would say a website has really kept us Malawi as well. It's been great to have people say, hey, I saw your work on your website. We do something similar, and it'll be someone who's runs a theater, like in the so when you put your work out there, it's actually getting seen. So I think having something as formal as a website where you lay out your portfolio and you say, this is what I do, even though you're trying to figure out how to lay out your portfolio because it's so diverse, people see it and they attach to it, to different parts of the portfolio in their own way. And that is like a breeding ground, very unique partnerships.
Yeah, every single partnership that Wona has gotten since we started, we have gotten through word of mouth and through our social media.